welcome to my channel Edible Thoughts Makes. This channel is where I share with you my works in progress, finished projects, things I'm cooking up, funny things the kids say, books I'm reading. My hope is that as you watch this episode and the previous episodes, that you find some inspiration along the way. Today I'd like to share with you a finished project. I am wearing it. This is the Pure Joy Shawl by Joji Locatelli. I very much enjoyed this project. If you've watched some of the previous episodes, you may know that lace is not my forte. I would pick color work over lace any day. And for a shawl, I love the simplicity of garter. It is worked flat. I'm not one of those that particularly avoids purling, but I will say that if I have the option of knitting versus purling, I would pick the knit stitch. So working flat, when it's in garter, you knit on both sides. So I like the reversibility of garter. And it's so squishy and stretchy and just, I want to say, it feels really down to earth and less fussy. I don't know, but I really like it. So there are eyelets in this, so there are yarn overs, and my dislike of lace usually has to do with yarn overs and not knowing where things go if things get messed up or something, but the yarn overs in this pattern are so simple. It's basically every other stitch when you get to that eyelet section, so that I can handle. And what I absolutely love is the wedges that you create in this shawl, and you have these eyelet sections that separate out each wedge. It is a crescent shaped shawl. The deepest point, I believe, check my notes, is 14 inches, and the width is 82 inches. Converted to centimeters, that's 35 centimeters for your deepest point, 205 centimeters for your width, or your wingspan, or shawl span, I guess. The pattern says you use approximately 810 yards of fingering weight yarn in 2 colors, and you use US 6 or 4mm size needles. So I knew from the beginning that one of my colors was going to run out. And so I was planning on adding in a second color A to extend the yardage of my color A1. So I have a color A1, I have a color A2, and then I have my color B. I did end up running out of my color A1, but when I calculated out the yardage that I used for my color A2, it was the approximate yardage that I was assuming I would use up of color A2, so it worked out really well. My second color, so my color B, I guess that's my third color, I ended up not using the whole thing, which I thought I was going to end up using the whole thing. My stitch count was correct at the end, I believe, so I'm not sure what happened there, but I know gauge can make a difference and other things like that, but I probably could have kept going on it if I wanted that last wedge even bigger, and just used up the rest of that skein of yarn, which would have been fine. I was a little nervous about having enough at the end because I wanted to do a picot edge bind off, which is not what was in the pattern. Pattern has written for an elastic bind off. I really like the picot edge look, so I wanted to make sure I had enough yarn for that, and that does eat up more yarn because of all these little bumps you are creating at the edge. But I absolutely love how that adds to this shawl. You will only have 2 ends to weave in if you just follow the pattern as written with the 2 colors. Because I had added in another color, I did have a couple extra extra ends to weave in, but it really wasn't a big deal. I do love that there aren't many ends to weave in. But let me show you. So my first color, I can't show you any remaining yarn because I don't have any remaining yarn. It is this beautiful multicolored speckle here. All 3 yarns I used are merino cashmere nylon blend, so 80%, 10%, 10%. The multicolored speckle and this warm red are from Colleen at Little Lionhead Knits, and this tonal peachy pink color I used is from Chris Christina at Teal Torch Knits. They are so soft and so lightweight. My other two shawls are DK or worsted weight, and this is my first fingering weight one that I have. Actually, I should back up. The first shawl I ever made is closer to like a heavy fingering or light sport weight yarn, and that one I gave to my mom for Mother's Day, and so this is my first fingering weight yarn and that I'm keeping for myself. I absolutely love it. From these wedges that grow to the picot edge to the eyelets, it's just so much fun. I'll take it off to show you. Because it's fingering weight, it wraps nicely around my neck and my shoulders without a lot of bulk, so it's a great piece to go into spring or summer. Our summer evenings and mornings are still a little cool, so this will be perfect for that. You see how these wedges grow? I love some asymmetry, and I've realized that I really like this crescent shape. The asymmetrical triangle shape is nice too, but you do end up with one end like super long and narrow, whereas this crescent shape, you still have this long end over here, but it just doesn't seem as long and narrow as the asymmetric triangle, which I still love, just saying they're different. So I can wear it with the deepest point in the back or in the front. And the garter just hugs your shoulders so nicely. I am in love with it. And yes, it brings me lots of joy. This Pure Joy shawl, I can totally see making in a bunch of different colors. Break out your variegated yarns, break out your speckled yarns. If you wanted to do both solid, you could. You could use different colors for your eyelets. If you wanted to use up some mini skeins, and do it for each one. I did not weigh out the yarn to see how many grams I used for each eyelet section, but that's something you could try and see to figure out what colors you wanted to use, maybe from scraps, to work up those sections. Highly recommend this pattern. It is written well, it is clear, it was a very enjoyable knit if you don't mind garter and eyelets. I would definitely make it again. My daughter said, Mommy, I want one too. So I think I might modify the pattern to make a DK weight version for her that's smaller. I haven't quite decided how I want to do it yet. Like, do I just knit until I run out of yarn, or do I maybe add more increases in so it grows faster deep wise instead of just like long, so it's not super long and skinny, that maybe it like the crescent shape is squished in just a little bit so she has enough to wrap around her neck, but the middle part isn't like super skinny. So we shall see how that experiment goes, but I absolutely love it and I highly encourage you to give it a try. So with that, cheers to being creative, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.